The sudden explosion rocked the starship, the impact jarring every crew member to their core. Captain Selene Devereux gripped the controls, her knuckles turning white. "What in the galaxy just happened?" she muttered. Her eyes darted to the chaos on the bridge, alarms blaring, screens flickering. A flash of red filled the viewport, signaling an incoming threat, but she wasn't sure from where. A rogue fleet of ships had broken away from the peacekeeping coalition, and now they were attacking. With the galaxy's fragile peace unraveling, Selene was thrust into a leadership role she never wanted. Her second-in-command, Eric Nix, leaned in, his voice low and urgent. "This is no accident, Captain. They've been compromised." She stared at the readouts on the console, trying to make sense of the situation. A new, unseen enemy had made their move, and Selene had to act fast. The stakes had never been higher. A galactic war was on the horizon, and the galaxy's fate rested on her shoulders. Captain Selene Devereux sat in the darkness of her quarters, the soft hum of the starship the only sound. Her fingers hovered over the datapad, her thoughts heavy. It had only been a year since she was forced into this position, a position she never wanted. She had been a brilliant officer, but her past weighed on her. Her actions, her decisions had cost countless lives in the previous conflict. She blamed herself for the disaster, and now, here she was again in command, with the galaxy on the brink of another war. The weight of leadership pressed down on her chest, suffocating her. "I'm not fit for this," she whispered, though she knew it was a thought she couldn't afford to entertain. Too many lives depended on her now. Eric Nix, her second-in-command, had been a constant presence, supportive, yet even his faith in her couldn't fully erase the doubt in her heart. She had to lead, there was no other choice. In the midst of the chaos, the holographic transmission flickered, revealing the face of Admiral Vale, a man whose reputation had once commanded respect across the galaxy. His now cold, calculating eyes spoke volumes. "You've made a grave mistake, Captain," his voice rang out through the bridge. Selene stood frozen, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. She hadn't expected him to be behind this. Vale had once been an ally, but power had twisted him into something unrecognizable. "You think you can maintain peace through diplomacy?" he sneered. "I will restore order by any means necessary." The transmission crackled before cutting off, leaving Selene with more questions than answers. His motives were clear now. A ruthless pursuit of control would stop at nothing to destabilize the fragile peace the galaxy had worked so hard to build. "We have to stop him," she muttered, the weight of his betrayal sinking in. "Why, Corvin?" Selene's voice cracked as she stood face to face with Commander Corvin Drack, her former confidant. The betrayal hung in the air like a suffocating fog. Corvin's eyes, once filled with camaraderie, now gleamed with ambition. "You think I would stand by while you fail again?" he sneered. Selene could hardly believe the words coming from his mouth. This wasn't the man she had once trusted with her life. Corvin had been the rock she had relied on in every battle. "You've always been weak, Selene," he continued, stepping closer. "I'll take the reins now. The galaxy needs strength, not hesitation." Her heart sank as she realized that Corvin had always been playing a different game. He was no longer an ally, but an adversary. "You'll regret this," she muttered, her voice cold and unyielding. She knew he had to be stopped, before it was too late. As the weight of her confrontation with Corvin settled in, Selene's communication panel flickered. The voice on the other side was unfamiliar, its tone calm, almost cryptic. "Captain Devereux," the voice began, smooth yet sharp. "I have been watching. You are not alone." A holographic image of a hooded figure appeared, barely more than a shadow in the dim light. "Your fight is not just against Corvin and Vale," the figure continued, "but against something far greater. I can offer you the tools to win, but only if you are willing to accept my help." Selene's heart raced. The offer was as mysterious as it was risky. Who was this person? How could they know so much? The figure's words left her with more questions than answers. "We'll be in touch again," the figure concluded, and the transmission ended abruptly. A feeling of unease settled over her. This new player in the game could either be her savior or her downfall. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos, and Captain Selene Devereux was caught in the heart of the storm. The warning alarms blared, signaling an incoming wave of enemy ships. "Brace yourselves," she commanded, her voice steady despite the rising tension. Her fingers flew across the controls, adjusting the ship's weapons and shields. "We're facing them head-on," she muttered to herself. Eric Nix, standing beside her, stared grimly at the screens. "In to be a bloody fight," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of their situation. "We can't afford to lose this battle." The first wave of enemy fighters appeared on the radar, their sleek designs a stark contrast to the worn-out ships of the peacekeeping coalition. "Ready all defenses," Selene ordered, her voice unwavering. As the enemy closed in, the stakes had never been higher. Failure was not an option. As the battle raged on, the unexpected happened. The ship's communication systems crackled to life. Captain Devereux came a cold, familiar voice. It was Commander Corvin Drac. "I hope you're ready for the truth." Selene's stomach churned. "Corvin, what have you done?" she demanded. The screen flashed, revealing the image of Corvin's ship, now aligned with the enemy fleet. His face was hard, a stark contrast to the man she once trusted. "I've made a choice," he said, his voice full of cold conviction. "You're too weak to lead. The galaxy needs power, not mercy." Selene's heart sank as the truth hit her. Corvin had betrayed them all, and the peace they had fought for was now hanging by a thread. "This ends here, Corvin," she whispered, the finality of her words echoing in her mind. In the midst of the chaos, the sound of small shuffling footsteps reached Captain Devereux's ears. She turned to see the young girl, Lyra, standing hesitantly by the door. At only 12 years old, Lyra's innocence was a stark contrast to the violence and betrayal surrounding them. "Captain, are you going to give up?" Lyra asked, her voice quiet yet determined. Selene knelt down to meet her gaze, her heart heavy. "I can't give up," she replied, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Lyra looked up at her with those hopeful eyes, a child's faith in the goodness of people still intact. "I believe in you," Lyra said, her words pure and simple. The weight of that innocent belief was all Selene needed to regain her focus. She stood tall, her resolve renewed. "Thank you, Lyra," she whispered. "We fight together." The sensors beeped loudly, and the viewfinder displayed a new image, a colossal alien vessel that appeared from the shadows of the nebula. Its massive form blocked out the stars, a horrifying reminder of the unknown forces they were up against. "What is that?" Eric asked, his voice filled with awe and fear. Captain Devereux studied the approaching ship, her mind racing to make sense of the impossible. The alien craft was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its jagged metallic surface reflected the faint starlight, giving it an ominous, menacing presence. "That," she replied grimly, "is the beginning of something far worse than we imagined." As the ship inched closer, a chilling sense of doom settled over the crew. The galaxy wasn't just at war with one faction. It was about to face an entirely new enemy. The final blow came when the alien ship opened fire, its energy weapons tearing through the peacekeeper fleet's defenses. The hull of Selene's flagship groaned under the impact, and alarms rang out in every corridor. "We're losing shields," Eric said, his voice tight with panic. "Captain, we have to retreat." But Selene stood firm, her hand gripping the control panel with white-knuckled determination. "No," she said, her voice resolute. "We fight back." A surge of power ran through her, and she activated the ship's weapon systems. "Prepare for a full assault," she commanded. The crew, despite their fear, responded with unwavering loyalty. As they opened fire, Selene couldn't help but feel that this was it, the turning point in the fight for the galaxy's future. If they didn't stand their ground now, there might be no future at all. The air was thick with tension as the two fleets faced each other in space. Captain Selene Devereux's hand hovered over the firing controls. The enemy ships loomed large in front of her, sleek and menacing. "Open fire," she commanded, her voice sharp, filled with authority. The Peacekeeper fleet had no choice but to strike first. The enemy's sudden assault had left them with no other option. Arik Nix stood beside her, his eyes scanning the incoming wave of ships. "This won't be easy," he muttered, adjusting the tactical console. Selene nodded, her eyes never leaving the viewport. A single shot fired from their flagship, marking the beginning of a fight that would decide the fate of the galaxy. "Stay sharp, everyone," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tense silence that filled the bridge. The first salvo was launched. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back now. As the battle raged on, a sudden shockwave rocked the Peacekeeper fleet. Selene's eyes widened as the communication systems came to life. The voice that crackled through the speakers was unmistakable. "Captain Devereux, I'm afraid you've underestimated me." It was Commander Corvin Drac. The betrayal cut deeper than any weapon could. Selene's heart sank as the transmission revealed Corvin's ship now aligned with the enemy fleet. "I thought we were allies," she muttered, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You were never meant to lead this galaxy, Selene." Corvin's voice came coldly. "It's time for a new order, one I control." His face appeared on the screen, showing no hint of remorse. His betrayal had turned the tides. "Corvin?" Selene whispered, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to let the betrayal break her. There was too much at stake. But now, the galaxy's future was in even more jeopardy than before. In the chaos of battle, a small figure emerged from the shadows, Lyra. The young girl, whose innocence had been a beacon of hope, now stood on the bridge, her face filled with determination. "Captain, don't let them win," she said softly, yet with a conviction far beyond her years. Selene turned, her heart heavy. Lyra's unwavering belief in her was a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding them. "Lyra," Selene said, her voice soft but firm, "this is no longer a game." But Lyra shook her head, stepping forward. "You're the leader. You can stop this." Her words rang in Selene's mind, a reminder of the hope she had almost lost. "Thank you," Selene whispered, her resolve firming. The galaxy needed her now more than ever. She couldn't let Lyra's innocence be shattered. "We fight," Selene said, her voice rising in strength. The alien ship's presence grew more menacing as it loomed larger, its weapons charged and ready. "We've underestimated them," Arik said, his voice grim. Captain Devereux's hands moved quickly across the console, adjusting shields and weapon systems. The alien ship fired first, its weapons creating a devastating explosion that rocked the Peacekeeper fleet. "Return fire," Selene ordered, her voice cutting through the shock and chaos. The bridge shuddered with each hit, but the crew held their ground. "We can't outlast them with these odds," Arik warned. "We need a plan." Selene's mind raced. "We won't just survive," she said, her voice unwavering. "We'll fight back with everything we have." A moment of silence followed as the crew prepared for the next strike. The galaxy's fate depended on their success, or their failure. With the alien vessel's firepower overwhelming their defenses, Selene knew they had to make a critical decision. "We can't keep retreating," she said, her voice full of resolve. "Prepare for a full assault." The crew moved with a sense of urgency as the countdown began. The battle outside intensified, and the Peacekeeper ships engaged in a desperate maneuver to counter the alien onslaught. Arik Nix approached her, his voice quiet but urgent. "This could be our last chance, Captain," he warned. Selene nodded, her mind made up. "It will be enough," she said, her voice unwavering. "We fight until the end." The crew gave their final nods, bracing for the impossible. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Selene's leadership would be the deciding factor. The transmission flickered, and a familiar face appeared on the holographic display. "Selene," the voice was calm but commanding. It was the hidden ally, someone who had been watching them from the shadows. Captain Selene Devereux felt a rush of both relief and dread. The figure, clad in a dark cloak with their face obscured by shadows, was speaking directly to her now. "I've waited for the right moment to reveal myself," the hidden ally's voice echoed. "The time has come, Captain." Selene's brow furrowed. "Who are you?" she asked, unable to mask the suspicion in her voice. The figure's presence had been an enigma, yet now the truth seemed imminent. "Someone who's been trying to prevent what's coming," they replied cryptically. "But the game is far from over, Captain. You'll need to make a choice soon. Trust me, or risk losing everything." The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. Captain Selene Devereux stared across the cold metal table at Commander Corvin Drac, his betrayal a wound that would never heal. "Why?" she demanded, her voice tight with a mix of anger and sorrow. Corvin's eyes were unwavering, cold. "You never understood, did you?" he sneered. "I always knew that peace was a lie. The galaxy can't be healed with kindness. It needs strength, dominance." Selene's fists clenched. She had trusted him, fought beside him, and now this, his twisted vision had torn them apart. "You were my closest ally," she whispered, the weight of her loss heavy in her heart. Corvin smiled bitterly. "You still don't get it, Selene. I'm doing what you couldn't. The galaxy needs a ruler, not a diplomat." He stood, his expression a mask of indifference. "I'm saving it from itself." The sting of his betrayal was sharp, but Selene knew one thing: he had to be stopped, no matter the cost. Admiral Vale's voice echoed across the transmission as he revealed his full plan. "The galaxy is weak, Selene," he said, his voice smooth, almost soothing. "All of you, every one of you, are too caught up in ideals to see the truth. It's time for a new order, one I control." The holographic projection of Vale, 45 male, flickered, showing him standing at the helm of his warship, a cold, calculating figure. "Your resistance is futile. I will reshape the galaxy into something better. My vision, my rule." He paused, a cruel smile crossing his face. "And you, Captain Devereux, will be the final piece of the puzzle. I will make you see reason, eventually." Selene's breath caught in her chest. Vale had been a trusted leader once, but now his ambition had turned him into a monster. The galaxy was at war, and Vale had made it personal. As the battle escalated, the sight of the tragic hero's sacrifice sent shockwaves through the crew. "This is it," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Selene turned to see the man who had once been a leader, now standing alone against a deadly force. "You don't have to do this," Selene shouted, her voice breaking. The tragic hero, his face marked by age and regret, shook his head. "It's too late, Selene. I've made my mistakes. Now I'll make it right." He stepped forward, activating the final charge that would buy them enough time to escape. The explosion shook the station, and his form was consumed in the blinding light. "Goodbye," he murmured, before the world went silent. Selene stood motionless, grief and guilt weighing heavily in her chest. The sacrifice had been his choice, but the cost was unbearable. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Lyra, the young girl, stepped forward, her eyes glowing with a strange energy. "I can help," she said, her voice calm yet filled with unspoken power. Captain Devereux watched in awe as the child reached out, her hands glowing with a soft, ethereal light. "Lyra," Selene said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. The child had always been a symbol of hope, but now she was something more, something powerful, perhaps even beyond understanding. "I know what I need to do," Lyra whispered. In a flash of light, the energy surged from her hands, enveloping the room in a brilliant glow. Selene felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. The war, the conflict, it all seemed so distant for a moment. "Thank you," Selene said softly, her voice filled with both awe and gratitude. Lyra had given them a chance to win, a chance for peace, but at what cost? The final showdown had arrived. The peacekeeper fleet, battered and bruised, faced the overwhelming might of the enemy forces. Captain Selene Devereux stood on the bridge, her heart pounding in her chest. "All units engage at full power," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. The crew moved quickly, their focus unwavering as they launched one final assault. "We're outnumbered," Arik Nix, 40 male, said, his voice grim. "But we've got one shot at this." Selene's eyes locked onto the enemy flagship, its massive form looming in front of them. The plan was simple: strike the heart of the enemy fleet and cripple their command center. No retreat, she declared. The crew's hands flew over their controls, weapons charged, shields up. It was now or never. "This is for the galaxy," Selene whispered to herself, her fingers hovering over the firing command. The energy built, and with a single command, the fleet launched their final offensive. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance. Just as the Peacekeeper fleet launched its final offensive, the unthinkable happened. A betrayal so deep it shook Selene to her core. "Captain," came the voice from the comms. "This is Commander Drack. We're turning on you." The betrayal wasn't just in words, it was in actions. The fleet under Corvin's command split off, aligning themselves with the enemy. "Corvin, you traitor!" Selene's voice trembled with shock and anger. "I told you," Selene. Corvin's voice echoed cold and calculated. "Peace is a lie. I've always known that the galaxy needs a ruler. I will be the one to reshape it, and you, Captain, will fall." Selene's heart dropped as her trusted ally turned against her, but she couldn't let it break her. "We fight through this," she said, her voice steady once again. "We finish this." As the battle raged on, and the betrayals continued to unfold, Captain Selene Devereux found herself at the edge of despair. Her mind raced, but amid the chaos, one thing became clear. "I've lost so much," she whispered to herself. "But I won't lose this." The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. The galaxy needed a symbol of hope, not just a leader. "I won't let this define us," Selene declared, her voice filled with newfound strength. She turned to her crew. "We're going to win this, together." The crew responded with unwavering loyalty. The turning point had arrived, and Selene knew that despite all the odds, they could still save the galaxy. The determination in her eyes was clear. This was her fight, and she would see it through to the end. With the enemy closing in, Selene knew that this was their last chance. "Prepare for the power surge," she ordered. The crew worked quickly, the urgency of their task filling the room. "We need to disable their flagship," Eric said, his voice tight with focus. "It's the only way to stop this." The plan was simple: overload their own weapon systems and launch a devastating self-inflicted surge that would take down the enemy flagship. Selene nodded, her expression grim but resolute. "Do it," she commanded. The ship's power systems hummed, and the countdown began. In a matter of seconds, everything would either collapse or fall into place. There was no turning back now. "This is it," Selene thought, as the energy built to a crescendo. "We end this now." The surge hit, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The Peacekeeper fleet's weapons unleashed their full fury, striking the enemy flagship with devastating force. The enemy's ship shuddered under the impact, its shields collapsing as the blast overwhelmed their defenses. "It's done," Eric whispered, his voice filled with relief. The enemy flagship began to break apart, its massive form slowly disintegrating. Captain Selene Devereux watched the destruction unfold before her eyes, a mix of triumph and sadness on her face. "We've won," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. The battle was over, but the cost had been high. The galaxy had been saved, but at a great price. As the last of the enemy forces retreated, Selene stood tall, her eyes filled with both sorrow and hope for the future. The silence after the battle was deafening. The galaxy had been saved, but at a tremendous cost. Captain Selene Devereux stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage of the battlefield. "We did it," she whispered, her voice hollow. The once proud Peacekeeper fleet was now a collection of battered ships, survivors picking up the pieces. Eric Nix, 40 male, stood beside her, his expression solemn. "It's over," he said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "But what comes next?" Selene's gaze hardened as she considered the future. The victory was bittersweet, a fragile peace that could easily shatter. "We rebuild," she replied quietly. "We rebuild together, or we risk losing everything we fought for." The weight of the responsibility settled on her shoulders once again. But this time, she knew she wasn't alone. Her crew, her family, was with her. Together, they would face whatever came next. The repair crews worked tirelessly, restoring the Peacekeeper fleet piece by piece. Captain Selene Devereux walked through the hallways of the flagship, her mind filled with plans for the future. This isn't over, she thought. The galaxy had been scarred by the war, but it was not beyond saving. We will lead it into a new era, she said aloud to herself. Her footsteps echoed through the empty corridor as she passed crew members working in quiet determination. Eric Nix appeared beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We'll get through this, Captain," he said, his tone reassuring. "We always do." Selene nodded, her resolve solidifying. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure. Together, they would rebuild the peace they had fought so hard for. The communication console beeped to life again, and the holographic projection of the hidden ally appeared. "Captain Devereux," the figure said, their voice filled with urgency. "You've won the battle, but the war is far from over." Selene's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, a sense of foreboding rising within her. The figure's face remained hidden beneath their cloak, but the weight of their words was unmistakable. "There are forces still at play, forces you cannot yet comprehend. You've made powerful enemies, and they won't stop until they see you fall." The warning hung in the air, ominous and unsettling. "What should I do?" Selene asked. The figure's glowing eyes seemed to pierce her. "Trust no one, not even those closest to you," they replied, before the transmission cut off, leaving a chilling silence behind. The survivor sat across from Captain Selene Devereux in the dimly lit briefing room. Their face was a map of pain, scars from the horrors they had witnessed. "We survived, a survivor," 25 female said, her voice low but steady. "But many didn't. We escaped, but only by the skin of our teeth." Selene listened intently, her heart heavy as the survivor recounted the horrors of an unknown alien threat that had nearly wiped out their homeworld. The war, it wasn't just about politics. "There's something far worse out there," the survivor continued, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "I've seen it, and it's coming for you next." The weight of the survivor's words hit Selene like a hammer. "We'll be ready," she said, her voice unwavering. The galaxy's battle was not over. It had only just begun. The decision had been made. Captain Selene Devereux stood in front of the massive windows, gazing out at the galaxy. "This is our future," she said, her voice full of quiet resolve. The war had taken so much, but it had also brought clarity. "We will not let the galaxy fall again," she declared. "We will rebuild, we will fight, and we will lead." Eric Nix, 40 male, approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Together," he said, his voice filled with certainty. Selene turned to face him, her expression softening. "Together," she repeated. The galaxy's future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it united. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the crew stood ready. The battle was over, but the journey ahead would be even harder. Still, they would face it as one. The ship drifted through the vastness of space, the sounds of the crew settling into a quiet routine. Captain Selene Devereux stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was at peace, at least for now. But peace always came at a price. "It's hard to believe it's over," Selene whispered to herself. The battles, the betrayals, and the sacrifices had changed everything. She had come to understand that leadership wasn't just about commanding ships or armies. It was about holding on to hope when all seemed lost. "I couldn't have done this without you," she murmured, thinking of her crew. Eric Nix, 40 male, approached from behind, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We did this together," he said softly. Selene nodded, a small bittersweet smile on her face. "Together," she repeated, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The future was uncertain, but at least they had a chance to face it together. Later, in the war room, Captain Selene Devereux sat alone, reviewing the status reports. The crew had been through so much, and now, they needed to rebuild. "It's not just the ships we need to fix," she muttered to herself. "It's the people." Eric Nix entered, sensing the weight of her thoughts. "You're carrying too much, Captain," he said softly. "The galaxy needs you to lead, but that doesn't mean you have to carry everything on your own." Selene looked up at him, her expression weary. "I can't stop thinking about everything we've lost," she confessed. Eric gave her a reassuring smile. "We've gained something too. You're not alone in this." Selene nodded, taking a deep breath. "We'll rebuild," she said, determination returning to her voice. "For them. For the galaxy." Later that night, in the quiet of her quarters, Captain Selene Devereux stared at the star map displayed before her. It was as though the weight of the entire galaxy rested on her shoulders. I've been a leader, she thought, but I've also been a human. The loneliness of command had never felt more real. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called softly. Eric Nix entered, his presence offering comfort. "You've been through hell," he said, his voice quiet but filled with understanding. "It's okay to feel this weight." Selene looked at him, her eyes searching his for a moment. "I failed people," she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You haven't failed anyone," Eric replied firmly. "You've done the impossible, and you'll do it again." His words, simple yet powerful, gave her a sense of relief she hadn't realized she needed. The next morning, Captain Selene Devereux addressed the entire crew. "We've been through the darkest of times," she began, her voice strong and resolute. "But now we must rise from the ashes. Together we will rebuild what was lost and forge a future that's brighter than before." The crew stood in the grand hall, their faces a mixture of determination and hope. "This isn't just about ships or battles," Selene continued. "This is about the people we protect. The future we fight for." The room erupted in applause, the energy in the air shifting. Eric Nix, standing beside her, gave her an approving nod. "We'll face the challenges ahead, just as we always have," he added. Together, the Peacekeeper flagship sailed through the stars, its crew now united in purpose. "This is just the beginning," Captain Selene Devereux said, her voice filled with hope for the future. "There will be challenges ahead, but we will face them together." She looked out at the endless stars, knowing that the galaxy still needed guidance, but it was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for a future. "This is the road ahead," she thought, her heart filled with a quiet strength. "And we will walk it with courage, side by side." The ship moved forward, its engines humming softly, the future waiting for them.